Well, hello, greetings and salutations. Yes, I'm stupid enough to try it again. Hopefully, this time around, there is sound. I certainly hope so, at least. Yeah, let me see what this says over here. Yep, it says I'm live. It says everything's working. Okay, good. So, if you are watching this as a video, which probably you are because I didn't announce this, I am going to go through a bunch of 45s and we're going to talk about them. I had a viewer leave a comment on an old video and they said they would like to see some picture sleeve 45s. Now, picture sleeve 45s are records that you used to go buy at the record store a long time ago, and they would come with special promotional sleeves. That's a picture sleeve 45. So this is a plain 45 and a plain sleeve right here, okay? See, there's nothing special about it. That's a white sleeve. And then you would also get records that came in record company sleeve. Let me see if I can find one real quick. Hold on, folks. I'll be right with you. Like this record here. See, this is in an Arista sleeve provided by the record company. So we're going to take a look at picture sleeve 45s today, which are considered somewhat special. The records themselves really aren't that big of a deal. They're just regular old 45 RPM records, but the sleeves make them special. So, yes, this is take two on this. I tried this last night and sat here and talked for about an hour and a half into a completely dead microphone. This computer that I'm using is normally hooked up to a DAC, and usually when I turn it on, it defaults to using the internal microphone, which is what you need to do a video like this, okay? And for some reason or another, just this once, it didn't do it. So the camera was working and everything looked like it was fine, and I was getting no audio. I'm using the internal microphone on the laptop computer here, and that's how I'm doing this video. And I checked it this time, so I'm pretty sure that you can actually hear me. Which is pretty cool. But I won't know because I don't have chat activated. And the reason why is because I can't see it, to tell you the truth. I mean, you could type all you want to, and I couldn't see your message. Or if I was going to look at it, you'd just see my forehead while I got real close to the screen to try and read it. I haven't figured that out yet. What I would like to do is get another device that I could put the chat on and have it real big and it be right here. And I'm just not set up to do that right now. So leave a comment. You can do that if you have any questions or feedback. If you like this kind of thing, let me know, and I'll do more videos like this in the future. Hopefully all of them will have sound. And yes, I'm stalling a little bit because I'd like a few people to be here before I actually started going through the 45s. I have quite the stack over here, and this is going to be a while. So get yourself a beverage and kick back and relax and enjoy the fun. So I cannot remember the person's name who made the comment. I should have written it down. YouTube these days makes it difficult for me to keep up with comments because they don't notify me in my email anymore. They used to do that years ago. For every comment that I'd get on every video, I'd get an email, and then I could kind of keep them that way, or copy and paste was easy. Now I have to actually go into Studio and read the comments. So, bit of a pain, and I forget things. But I do try and respond to pretty much all the comments I get these days. But actually, I only remember to look at them like once every 2 or 3 weeks. So, let's go ahead and get started talking about picture sleeve 45s. These are in alphabetical order. And my daughter today, I was on the phone with her, and she was telling me how she tells her friends how her father must have some sort of autism of some sort, because I alphabetize all of my music collection, my CDs behind me and my LPs, which you can't see, they're over here, and 45s as well. And I told her, I said, why does it automatically mean that somebody has a disorder if they do something in a way that makes it easy later? Like if you have a couple thousand of something, Doesn't it make sense to put them in some sort of order so that if you want to find a Rod Stewart record, you can just get it and go for it, you know? Anyway, kids, first record, Aha, Take on Me. What year was this? 85, 84, something like that. Don't know off the top of my head. This is one of those big iconic records of the 80s. I have 2 copies in this sleeve. A lot of the times I do that, boys and girls. If it's a big record and if I've come across more than one copy, the record that's in the picture sleeve will be the one that I'm not going to play every day. If I want to hear the record, I'll have a regular copy behind it, which you could call a burner. So that's how that works. Record number 1, Aha, Take on Me. Now we have, I don't know, about 40 more to go. So let's get cracking. All right. Another big hit from the 80s. You're going to see a lot of 80s records. This is Atlantic Starr, and this is a song called Always. This was big slow dance at the sock hops and at the skating rink, slow dance record. Put that up there so you can see that as well. And now I will talk as we go through these about how I collect records. These days, I don't buy specific records usually. What I do now is I will buy records from jukebox distributors. These are people that ran jukeboxes in a city somewhere, and they have a warehouse full of records, and they're selling them off in lots. And you don't know what you're going to get. You have no idea. But you can buy boxes of, let's say, 120 records for, I don't know, $30 or $40 or something like that. At today's prices, if you get 10 that are worth keeping, you've made your money back. And I do that a lot because I think it's a lot more fun. When I specifically buy a record online, about half the time I am disappointed. People out there will sell records as new old stock and near mint, and there's really no way to know. You're kind of taking a gamble, like if you buy something on eBay or even Discogs. And sometimes I have wanted to buy a particular 45 for some reason or the other, or an LP, and I'll be all excited to get it, and I'll wait a week and a half, 2 weeks for it to get here, and it's junk. Throw it in the trash. Oh, you want to see my t-shirt? That's right. Be kind. Rewind. Okay, so this is Arcadia. And this is one of those records that came in a box. I didn't specifically go after this one for any reason. And this was a offshoot of Duran Duran. So this would have been 87, 88, something like that. And the name of the tune is Election Day. You may remember that. Here's another one that came in a box, but this is actually one that I probably would have bought because I really dig this band. And that is Asia, Heat of the Moment from 82. These guys to me were just super cool when they came out. I have the LP on QX2, and I also have the CD up on that shelf behind me. So yeah, a lot of fun. Heat of the Moment. That was the lead single from that album, Asia. The Asia album actually has a name. The name of the album is Alpha, but nobody seems to know that. Here's an iconic song from the 80s, Mickey by Tony Basil. And don't have a burner copy of this one. No, this isn't one I would play every day. This is one that I got by accident. There you go. Trying to get my hand out of the way so you can see the label. So yeah, record's in really good condition. Why don't you turn it right side up? There you go. People out there going, you're showing it to me upside down. Why are you doing that? Is this all there is? This isn't any fun. Why are we doing this? It's free, okay? All you had to do was click on it. Don't complain. I've collected all this crap, so got to show it sometime, right? This is Laura Branigan from 1984, and the name of the song is The Lucky One. And there is a burner copy in here, so let me pull this up so you can see the other side. And the other side of this picture sleeve is mainly Atlantic Records advertising her first three albums there. Laura Branigan was pretty big in the 80s, and she has a voice that I really like. Um, I think I actually bought this. I think I actually ordered this individually, but I'm not really sure. I know that the burn copy in the back came in a box of jukebox records. Movie music. This is John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, man, and Tender Years from the soundtrack to the movie Eddie and the Cruisers. We have a picture of the album cover on the back there, and we get the shine off the screen. Sorry about that. I have tried to figure out how to do this without getting glare from the lights, and it is very difficult to do. I have two lights on either side of me that are diffused, and I think that's about the best way to go. When I first did this, I had one in front of me, and it caused a lot of glare on these plastic sleeved 45s. Here's another one from the 80s, boys and girls. I have a lot of 80s, okay? I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. And this is Belinda Carlisle, Heaven on Earth. Let's see, we're just seeing the screen again. There we go, Heaven on Earth from Belinda Carlisle. And we're not done. There's another record in this sleeve, Circle in the Sand from 1988. Two big hits from Belinda Carlisle. I'll show you the back of that one too. Is there anything interesting on the back of this one? Not really, just another picture of Belinda. I love the Go-Go's. They're my favorite girl band of all time. And I like Belinda Carlisle an awful lot. Poor thing, she couldn't dance. Back in the 80s, you'd see video of the Go-Go's on stage somewhere, and the only dance she could do was the pogo. She would go up and down like this, just bounce all over the stage. And then many years ago, there was a television show, Dancing with Celebrities, or Dancing with the Stars, or whatever it was called. She was on there, and she was like the first booted off because she couldn't dance at all. Just couldn't do it. This is Eric Carmen, Make Me Lose Control from 1988. And we have two records in this sleeve. Trying to get this to come out a little bit there so you can see the back. And I also have a burner copy. So that's a song that I actually like. So a lot of times when I'm showing people how cool 45s can sound, this is one of the records I grab because really, really well recorded. It really sounds good. Hope I'm being heard. I have no way to know. For those of you joining late, what I'm doing in this video is showing you picture sleeve 45s in alphabetical order. I attempted to do this last night and actually sat and talked for an hour and a half into a dead microphone. And nothing happened. So hopefully that's not happening again tonight. I forgot to pull a plug on the laptop. That I have a DAC that's always plugged into the laptop. Last video I did, when I turn the laptop on and I want to record something with the DAC, it always reverts to the microphone in the laptop, right? So I figured it would do it last night. It didn't. So I got no audio. One of my favorite tunes from the 80s. This is Paul Carrick, and this is the short version of the single edit of Don't Shed a Tear. And this is on an album called One Good Reason, which is a really great record, one of my favorite albums of all time. And I bought this one. This is not one that came in a box. I did buy this one from somebody. And they sent me a record. Usually I like to have a sleeve, but I didn't get one. I'll get some more of those sleeves to put the records in shortly. Cheap Trick, The Flame from 1988, one of my favorite songs from the summer of 88. And this is the picture sleeve with a polystyrene 45 in it. This is also polystyrene. Don't Shed a Tear. I haven't been telling you whether they were or not. I think up to this point, though, they've all been pretty much vinyl. Now, for those of you who are uninitiated, it's a good time to talk about that. 45s come in two flavors. 45s come vinyl, which is usually what 12-inch LPs are pressed on. John Cafferty is styrene. Yeah, okay. So we've only seen one styrene so far. Another method for making 45 RPM records, which was pioneered by Columbia Records in the early 50s, was injection molding. And the records are made out of polystyrene. They're not made out of vinyl. So it's one of the reasons that you hear people say vinyl records, or even the millennials will call them vinyls. Guess what, folks? Not all records are made out of vinyl. From a collector's point of view, polystyrene is considered to be inferior to vinyl because it does wear out quicker if it's played on equipment that isn't up to par. So if you have a turntable that with a heavy tracking stylus like the old ceramic styli, the cartridges back in those days, and you didn't change the needle, it would rip the grooves out of a polystyrene record pretty quickly. A lot of polystyrene that comes out of jukeboxes is worn, and you can hear it. Jukeboxes eat records. They tracked between 5 and 9 grams usually. And the jukebox company that would come in and change out the records once a month, they were supposed to change the stylus once a month. They didn't necessarily always do it. And if that stylus started to wear, even though it's made out of diamond, it's going to wear, it would just start eating records. And so you run into those records. And the funny thing about jukeboxes wearing records is that depending on the jukebox itself, there may not be any marks on the record. A lot of the times with jukeboxes, you can see jukebox marks where the record's been handled by the mechanism. But sometimes you don't see any at all. And then you go to play the record and the grooves are just gone. That's why you cannot grade 45s by looking at them. You can't do it. Sometimes they can look perfectly brand new and sound horrible when they play. This is Eric Clapton, movie music from the album, from the movie soundtrack, rather, to Legal Eagles. It's in the way that you use it. I showed you the backside of that first. And that's a vinyl pressing. Now, this is a fun little bunch of records here. This is an album somebody gave me years ago. This is a 45 RPM album. So in the early 50s, when all the speeds were competing, the record companies were still making 78s for people who still had the old record players that played 78. And for a short period of time, I think it was just like a year in 1949 and 50 and maybe into 51, Columbia Records was they were only making LPs because they had introduced that format in 1948. And in 1949, RCA had come up with the 45 RPM format, which is different and designed for singles. The 45 RPM is a direct evolution of the 78 RPM record. Now, 78s have another name. They're called SPs, standard play. You'll see that in old literature. They'll say it's an SP. And then these are, 12-inch big long play records. Those are LPs, and then 45s. So there was a period of time where all of this was in competition with one another. And then finally, everybody came to their senses in 1951, and RCA said, it would be nice to release all this classical music on the big 12-inch LP. Maybe we'll take you up on that offer to use that technology. And Columbia jumped in and said, well, we're going to make 45s now too, because they discovered that they were really cool in jukeboxes. But for a period of time, you could go and buy an album, which originally the name album was for a collection of records, like you would buy a book of 78s, okay? And there would be one song on each side. And then the next evolution of that would be this kind of an album where it's a 45. This is Unforgettable, Nat King Cole, and it's on 45 RPM records, right? And you'll notice that there are 2 songs per side. That gives you 8 songs. And then you could also go and buy a 10-inch LP of this exact same album on Capitol. But like the original 45 RPM record players that RCA made, they didn't play anything but 45. So if this is what you had, the record companies put that out. Sounds crazy today, doesn't it? It didn't last very long. They stopped making 78s altogether by about 1960, and so then it was just 45s and LPs, and most of the record players that you could buy up to that point could play either one. This is The Good Times and Ramblin' Rose, Nat King Cole, on a picture sleeve. This would have been 1962, 63, something like that. You can put it in the comments if I'm wrong. And Ramblin' Rose was the flip side, but that was the big hit off this 45. So put that back together. Phil Collins from his first solo album. And this is the first album was Hello, It Must Be Going, right? I'm pretty sure that was the name of it. And I Missed Again was the first single, so this is it right here. And this one's hard to get out of this sleeve, so I'm not going to do it. I got a burner record on the other side, though. There's nothing on the other side. This is just this picture in negative. That's what it is. So keep going here. It's another from Cousin Phil. That's what I always called him. Don't Care Anymore. A picture sleeve. This is a promo copy. It's a white label Atlantic promo of I Don't Care Anymore in a picture sleeve. That came in a batch of records that I bought online. Movie music. This is Against All Odds. Mr. Phil Collins there from the soundtrack to that movie. Horrible movie. Terrible movie. Great song. Horrible movie. And this is vinyl, by the way. If I don't say it's styrene, it ain't styrene. Got a couple in one bag here. Phil Collins, Don't Lose My Number. This was released in, I believe it would have been really late 85. I seem to recall this being sometime like in back to school time, fall. And what's interesting about this is the flip side of this is a tune called We Said Hello, We Said Goodbye, which doesn't appear on the LP version of the album No Jacket Required, which is where this song came from. That song only appeared on the CD and cassette version of that album. They didn't include it because of technical reasons. If they had put that on the record, it would have been too long. Plus, during the 80s, they were doing little bonus things like that to make you go buy the CD. It's like, oh, the CD, they cost so much at that time that you really had to say, hey, there's some value here. So they put an extra song on the CD. This is I Wish It Would Rain Down. This is a little bit later on. This is from 1990. And in the bag here, I just realized we have a jukebox insert. Let me see which one it is. It's this one right here. Focus. Yeah. Sometimes you get these, especially from jukebox companies. You'll pick those up and put that in there with the record so it doesn't get separated. The record companies sometimes would send them with those little cards. So when you buy the jukebox records, they're floating around in there. The jukebox records, by the way, are interesting because they can be brand new or they can be so tore up you just throw them away. Here's a band you may or may not remember. This is the Cover Girls, Inside Outside, from the 1980s. And this is another one of those things that ended up in the box there with a bunch of other records. And this is a polystyrene, but it is an original pressing, and it's in good shape. See, I play my polystyrene records with, I don't put them on anything with an elliptical stylus. I will play them with, or a broad elliptical, like a 0.4 by 0.7, or I play them with a Stanton stylus, which is a 0.7 spherical, like a ball. And tracking less than at 2 grams, that's not going to hurt your records. Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young with Just a Song Before I Go. And I got a burner record in the back here. The flip side of this is Dark Star, which is a song that I actually like an awful lot. And on the back, they show all the Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young albums that you can buy. This would have been 77 when they made they made a return. You know, they went away for a while because they were all drugged out and fighting with each other. And so they didn't do anything for several years. And then they came back and started doing some more. Then they went away again because they were really messed up. And then they got all cleaned up. When they got all cleaned up, they got back together in, I think, about 1988 and put out an album. And that's where this song came from, American Dream, which is a, turn it around this way. Yeah, American Dream. Okay, and then the flip side is a tune called Compass. And this is a original vinyl 45. I went and bought this record, not this exact one, but I remember buying this record at the record store. I liked the sound of it. I liked the bass and I liked the harmonies. I didn't really care about the words. And so I remember picking this up at the record store. When I was a kid, I started collecting records seriously when I was about 13. And by the time I graduated high school, I had, I don't know, probably 600-800 albums and probably 500 or 600 45s. And then I gave them all away. Gave them away because I was working in radio and I knew I'd be moving around all over the world and I didn't want to carry them with me. And we had these things coming along, CDs. I figured, oh, you don't want them old records anymore. And so for about 17 years, I didn't have any records. And then I started hearing a buzz about 2008, 2009 about people getting back into records again. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to buy me a turntable. So I bought a turntable, bought a few used records online, instantly hooked. It was like coming home to a friend. And it was hearing the music as it was originally intended to be heard. We'll talk about that later on. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that's something I want to talk about toward the end of the video. This is Terence Trent D'Arby. And let's see, what's the name of this tune? Dance Little Sister. This guy had a couple of hits in the late 80s. The first thing he came along with was a tune called Wishing Well, which was a pretty good song. It was the summer of 88. And then there's something else I don't remember. And then that was the last thing that he put out, and then he just kind of disappeared. So he's not a one-hit wonder, but like a 3-hit wonder. Here's another little-known group from the 80s. This is Device. Remember these guys? They had a couple of very mild hits. Device. What is the name of the song? Hanging On. Hanging on to something. I can't make that out. You read it. You tell me what it is in the comments. I don't know why I can't make out that last word there. Anything like that. Don't matter. Move on. Figure it out later. Dyslexia is kicking in. That's what's happening. Happens to me sometimes. I don't know if I look at a word and I don't know what it is. Does that happen to you? And then, of course, I figure it out later and I went, where didn't you see that? A couple of Neil Diamond records. This is Neil Diamond with Love on the Rocks from the Jazz Singer. Great big record. And it's the flip side of Love on the Rocks. Because these are really good. Love on the Rocks is the A. And then the B is Acapulco. Put this back in its thing now. There we go. Another one. Probably the most remembered song. These are the two most remembered songs from that particular album, The Jazz Singer. This is America. And that's the backside of that as well. Once again, terrible movie. It was supposed to be a remake of the 1927 Jazz Singer, and it was kind of the story, and it wasn't, and it was Neil Diamond was acting. It's just cringy to watch these days. Cringy. So is Purple Rain by Prince, but it anyway. It was a movie. What the hell? Back in those days, it was like $350 to go see a matinee. But the album did really, really well. The Jazz Singer by Neil Diamond. Several hits from that record. The other big song was Hello. Hello again. Hello. Moving on. Duran Duran with the Wild Boys. This would have been the fall of '84 when this was on the radio. Pretty cool. By the way, Terrence Trent D'Arby was on a styrene Columbia 45. See, I thought I was holding that up there and it fell down in, but there you go. For those of you who want to see the record, there you go. All right, moving on. One of my favorite songs. This is one that I actually bought. This didn't come in a box. It was one that I sought out. Sheena Easton, Modern Girl. And in the UK, this was the first thing that she came out with. This was the first time that you heard her. In the United States, the first song that was released was Morning Train 9 to 5. And this was released after that. Okay. So this is the 45. It's an almost perfect condition. But this is a song that I really liked from my youth. When I was a kid, I remember hearing this on the radio. I love the mix on this. I still do. It's one of my favorite tunes. More Sheena Easton. And this is interesting because this is the British version of this 45. I wanted to order the 45, and there was a record store in London that would ship internationally. They sold used records, so I picked this up there. And so this is the British original version. Make sure I'm holding this up properly. Yeah, right there. Okay. And then later on, in a box of stuff, I got this version, which is the American 45. And these are both original early pressings. So, yeah, one of my favorite songs of all time, For Your Eyes Only by Sheena Easton. Still think the beginning of that movie is so cool. It's from a James Bond film of the same title. It was a big deal for her to get the Bond song. That for all of those Bond movies, if you were an artist that was asked to do the James Bond thing, that meant that you were hot and happening. And very few Americans got to do that. Maybe 2 or 3. I know Carly Simon did one, and Louis Armstrong had a chance to do one of those, but most of the others were British artists. This is kind of a fun record. The record companies used to do things like this. This is Billy Eckstine, he was a kind of a big band singer who was very popular in the 30s and the 40s. And then he did a little comeback thing in the early 70s. And so this is the modern sound of Mr. B, which is actually a 7-inch promo for a full-length album. So you see all these songs on the front that they're listed there. That's the album cover. But then you would have this little promo version, and it has about half the songs on it. It's got 3 on each side, and it's a 33. Let me get that. Yeah, it's a 33 and a third RPM record. See, Mini 33. That came in a box of stuff. Pleasantly surprised. When I was growing up, one of the radio stations I used to listen to was WTAR in Norfolk, and after I graduated high school, that was the first radio station I went to work for. And since the day this song came out, for about, 10 or 15 years after that, they beat the crap out of it, and I don't know why. This is not one of my favorite records, but I own it anyway, Edward Bear and the Last Song from 1973. This came in a box of jukebox stuff. I think there's a jukebox label in here. This is on Capitol. Styrene. No, it's not styrene. No. Vinyl. Capitol never pressed anything on styrene. Ever. If anybody's ever seen a Capitol record on styrene, I hope you took a picture because I'd like to see it. I've never seen it. So, all of that to get this. To show you, did I hold it upside down? Make sure. Edward Bear. Last Song. Sweet Talking Woman, Electric Light Orchestra. This was 77. Not a big hit on its own, but there's a couple of things that makes this an interesting 45. First of all, it's a colored 45, clear actually. I used to have a linear tracking turntable that wasn't able to play this record. So it was, you had to do it manually. You had to because the record used light to figure out how big the record was and where it was on the platter and all that. The turntable did. It used a light, and so it would shine through the record, and it wouldn't know what to do with it. You'd push the play button, and it would just sit there. It was that Sony linear tracker I had years ago. It showed up in a few videos. I sold that turntable, and unfortunately, it got destroyed in the mail. It actually, was very sad about that. The flip side of this is Fire on High, which is a song that was used by another local radio station, WMYK, to do a special ID at night. So I was kind of happy to get that record. Actually, I think that record came from a friend of mine, Phil, who has a YouTube channel called Hitstown USA. He sent me some records many years ago. Okay. Miami Sound Machine, Gloria Estefan. This is Bad Boy. And this is the original single version that was played on the radio. Unfortunately, I have not found this on CD anywhere to sound just like it, the original mix here. So that's one that I wanted to have. And I bought these in a lot. So I got that one. Then another one I got was this one of my very favorite songs of all time. Gloria Estefan, Anything for You. No, not Anything for You. Can't Stay Away from You. There you go. Anything for You came later. I like that one too, but not as much as this one. And this one, because it's Epic, which is part of the Columbia record chain, these are all on styrene. Anything Columbia, Epic from the 80s is probably going to be on styrene. Not all of them. There are a few floating around that were pressed on vinyl, but most of the time, Columbia used their own presses. And so anyway, we have Anything for You. Here's the back of that. And then the burner copy I have is a white label promo. That's my burner. And I bought these records. I wanted them in my collection. I bought the one in the picture sleeve, and it has a tiny little defect in the first 30 seconds of the record, which was enough to make me go buy another one. Because I wanted them to be perfect. I want to be able to transfer them over and maybe someday start a radio station where all I play is stuff from 45s. So this is another one. Bet You Say That. I think that came with Bad Boy. I bought them in a lot. All right. Just moving right along here. More movie music from the movie Beverly Hills Cop. This is Harold Faltermeyer with Axel F theme. It's an instrumental. This would have been late 84. Flip side is Shootout. And this is MCA vinyl. Fine Young Cannibals drives me crazy. She drives me crazy. What was this? 89, about 90. So it's on IRS Records, and it is vinyl. Pretty cool little band. They didn't have a whole lot of hits, but they had a nice sound. This record is this was somebody's favorite record, guys, but it's still playable and it sounds quite good. And it's a Capitol pressed Warner Brothers. You can always tell Capitol pressings because of that ring. Can you see that? Let me see if I can get in close enough where you can see. See that ring around the label there? That was an innovation they came up with in the late 60s, which most collectors hate because it tends to kind of wear the picture sleeves sometimes. This is Old Man Down the Road, and this is when John Fogerty was making his big comeback in the early 80s after Creedence Clearwater Revival had disintegrated and gotten and sued each other, and it was a big ugly thing. They actually sued him over that record, saying that this is true. The other members of the album the group Creedence Clearwater Revival sued John Fogerty, saying that he was imitating himself and he was trying to capitalize on his original sound, which for some reason or another they didn't want him to do. There was a bitter rivalry between the Fogerty brothers, and he went to court, and the judge said, "You can't imitate yourself," so they threw it out. Go-Go's! Head over heels. This would have been 84. And this is an IRS, and it's on styrene. Oh, well. It plays okay. It's all right. It's not great, but, this is just for fun anyway. All right, I'm going to show you a record that I'm not particularly proud of right now. I am and I'm not, because, as I said, I started collecting records seriously when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And one of the first records I bought with my own money. Okay, this wasn't somebody bought me a record. I didn't ask my parents to buy it for me. Nobody gave it to me. I went into the store and I bought this with my own money. And that is Corey Hart. Sunglasses at Night. And the flip side is a tune called At the Dance. Right? One of the first 45s I ever owned that I bought myself. I had records, but I'm just saying that that's when I really started getting, about that time, I started getting interested in the idea of collecting records. And then I also have a burn copy here, so I can play that without playing the one in the sleeve, picture sleeve. I like that song, okay? I know it's stupid, but my 13-year-old, 12-year-old self really dug it, okay? Here's an interesting single from Elton John from an album that didn't have any hit singles. The name of the album was Single Man, and this is Part-Time Love on MCA Records. That's what MCA labels looked like in 1978 or so. I have the album too. There was an instrumental on there called Song for Guy that my brother really liked, and I picked up the album somewhere, record shop or whatever, and for that song particularly. My brother had the tape when I was a kid, and we used to listen to it all the time. Not one of Elton John's best albums, but still pretty good. There's another one I'm ashamed of, okay? But Phil at Hitstown USA, you have this record too. He's posted, like, playing the record. Don Johnson from 1986. Heartbeat. This was actually a pretty good top 40 hit, boys and girls. From Miami Vice. You have to be of a certain age to appreciate that, I would suppose. Miami Vice fans. This is a bit of fun from the Jump in the Saddle Band. Let's get the front. The Curly Shuffle. It's hard to tell which ones are the front and which ones are the back. In this case, I think this is the front. You can't go by where the little sleeve thing is. Flip side is called Jump for Joy. What these guys were was a really good bar band that did a record about the Three Stooges. It's not one of my favorite tunes either, but it's kind of cool. And for a novelty tune, if you ever go to listen to that, the Curly Shuffle, it is so well recorded. I mean, it's like super well engineered. It's like great sounding. This was a pretty big record in 1986. And it's Huey Lewis and the News. And this was the first single from the album Four. There was a lot of worry in the music industry that they weren't going to be able to top the album Sports, which came before that and had a bunch of hits on it. It was one of the big iconic albums of the early 80s. But when Stuck With You came out, it immediately went straight to number one, and everybody stopped worrying about it. This is a record that I bought online, new old stock. It's a group called Living in a Box. By the way, the Huey Lewis is on. See, I keep forgetting to do this. Shouldn't have started probably doing it anyway. Huey Lewis is on a lovely styrene chrysalis copy. Jump in the Saddle, believe it or not, is vinyl. This is a group called Living in a Box, and the name of the tune is Living in a Box. This would have been 88 or 89. So there you go. Two versions of the same tune. Did I put that upside down? No, I didn't. I did not put it right side up. So bought this for a project that I was doing. I was making a mixtape for my brother. This song was always a joke for us. We used to go around singing, "I'm living in a box, I'm living in a cardboard box." We just do this all the time. So I went and found it. When I first went to work for WTAR, this song was a hit on the adult contemporary charts, and we were playing it, and it came and went really fast. You might not even remember it, but it was a pretty good hit. Friends and Lovers. And this is Gloria Loring and Carl Anderson on Career Records, spelled funny. Here you go, Polystyrene Dream with the great big UPC on it. Lovely, very collectible. But I do remember the song. More movie music. Los Lobos. This is La Bamba from the movie about Richie Valens. And this is a vinyl record. Yes, it is. Vinyl for sure. With a... there you go. It's in just about perfect condition. Okay. How long does this go on? Well, we're into the L's. We're going to the Y's. The last one that I show you starts with Y. So here we go. Loverboy. Name of the tune is Notorious. Lovely Columbia Styrene. Yes. Ooh. Thing about styrene records is that I will get boxes and boxes of these jukebox records, and the styrene ones will be, when they're screwed up, I just break them and throw them away when they're played, overplayed. Just for fun, Steve Martin and the Tutankhamons, King Tut from 1978. This was when King Tut was on tour around the world. It started out as a comedy bit on Saturday Night Live. A lot of people don't know it, but Steve Martin is a fantastic bluegrass banjo player. And on the flip side of this, there's some of him playing banjo, and he's a great guitar player as well. The Tutankhamons, by the way, were the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And it was kind of a one-off thing from Steve Martin. He had an album out that year that had that on it, where he did stand-up as well. This record was disappointing when it came out, when the 45 came out. I guess this would depend on what part of the world you were in. It's Men Without Hats with Safety Dance, okay? This is the 45 version, of course, right? This is the single version. It sucks, okay? And this was not what I wanted when I went and bought it when I was a kid. This is another record that I bought with my own money at the record store. And I wasn't hip enough to understand that the special 12-inch radio version was the one I really wanted. And I wasn't, as a kid, frequenting the kind of record stores that would have that. I was going to like department stores and looking in the record bin. So I got this home and put it on my BSR turntable at the time. And I was disappointed. I was like, that's not what I'm hearing on the radio, because the remix, go look for Men Without Hats 12-inch remix on, they have it on YouTube. They have everything on YouTube. And listen to it. That was the version I wanted, and this is what I ended up with. However, fast forward 40-something years, this shows up in a box of jukebox records unplayed. So I had to keep it, right? Oh, one of my favorite songs here, boys and girls. And this is another one of those where we have several things to look at for one song. This is the British version of Naked Eyes' Promises, Promises. This is a song that made it to number 11 on the pop charts and number 1 on the adult contemporary charts in the United States in 1983, summer of 83. It was kind of a new wave, jazzy kind of thing. If you've never heard this, this is a great tune. And I wanted the 45 because I wanted the 45. So when I bought Sheena Easton, I also bought this and had it shipped to me from England. And just to show you that it is the English 45 with the small hole. Nobody knows quite why in England they don't have the big holes in the 45s, but there you go. Put this on the turntable when I got it, after waiting for it to come over on the Queen Mary, forever. And I was like, that doesn't sound quite right. What's wrong with it? And what it was that when this was released in the United States on EMI America, here it is on that label right there, or the flip side, one of the two. Yeah, it's the flip side I'm showing you. Why don't you show them the right side, Joe? Okay, I'll do that. So there's Promises, Promises. This, when it was released in the United States, was actually sped up about 2%. They took it up 1 sharp. And I guess they thought it dragged a little bit, the original British version. So in the United States, they sped it up just a tiny bit. Now, they have some compilation CDs that this appears on. One of them is called The Big 80s. It's the American Master, not the British, that you hear on that. So I guess this has become the international standard. Naked Eyes, Promises, Promises. They had another big hit in the United States, Always Something There to Remind Me, a song that was originally a hit in the 60s for Sandy Shaw. Burt Bacharach and Hal David wrote that, I believe. If I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comments. And they also had a couple of other tunes that were hits here in the United States. I think they were bigger in England than they were here. The new wave thing didn't quite last as long as it did in England. I think it kept going, and in the United States, we got through it real quick, you know. There's a whole bunch of records in here, but I'll pull. See how many? I think I've got one with a picture sleeve in here, or is it 2? Let's see what we got going on here. This is all stuff from the musical Grease. So I have, no, it's just the one. No, there's 2 in here. So let's go ahead and get those out. No more picture sleeve, just one. Okay. You're the One That I Want. Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta from Grease. A lovely styrene pressing on RSO Records. Man, RSO would press with any company that would take it, man. You see these on styrene and vinyl and whatever. It's catch as catch can. It really is. Never know what you're going to get. On the West Coast, they had a lot of independent pressing plants like Monarch Records in Los Angeles made styrene. A lot of West Coast records were pressed on styrene. Even Motown, Berry Gordy Jr. didn't like styrene. As a matter of fact, many years ago, I was under the impression that they never pressed on styrene because he disliked it. And then a friend of mine in California sent me a Motown record pressed on styrene. Because the way this used to work, You got to remember, when a song was going out, they were in a hurry to get it out. They would do it as quickly as possible. And if they felt like it was going to be a hit, they might press 100,000 copies up front. And so you would have to figure out what pressing plant could do it. And even if you were in a record label that owned their own plants, they might be busy. So they used to farm this out all over the place and then have these records drop shipped, to record stores and radio stations all around the country. There was this big distribution network. It's not like today. I work on the music library at the radio station. A new song is easy to get. I go to a website, I download a WAV file, I dump it into the system. There's no physical distribution network there at all. Back in the old days, that's the way it was. And so when these are really high quality, Olivia Newton-John here with Heart Attack, and then on the back they're selling you more records. This is an unusual, no. This is, that is vinyl. For some reason I thought that was styrene, but it's not, it's vinyl. I think I maybe had a vinyl and then got something else. Anyway, when you get a 45 that actually sounds good, I mean, like the channels are balanced and the levels are right and it's not distorted and all that stuff, that's a major achievement because these things were made quickly. They were trying to get the records out. Here's a vocal group from the 80s. Probably nobody remembers these guys, but I do. This is the Nylons with a remake of that song, Kiss Him Goodbye. That was originally a hit in 1969 for a group called Steam. Remember them? And this is a lovely vinyl record on some independent record label. Let me see that. Focus. Yep. Put that over here. Here's a group that had a couple of pretty decent sized hits in the late 70s and then disappeared for a while and then came back in the late 80s and actually had a few hits. This is Poco. And they were together for a long, long time. I mean, it's a tune called Under the Gun. This song came out in 1980. I don't think this was a huge hit at the time, but it's a very nice sounding record, and it's a vinyl MCA. They were on ABC Records before that, and then MCA took over. Hey, man, let's look at some Elvis. First, I got something completely ridiculous here. This came in a box of records. This is Elvis Sings for Children. And they released Teddy Bear and Puppet on a String on a 45. Teddy Bear was a big hit for Elvis in the 50s. It has nothing to do with kids at all, other than that was the name, Baby Let Me Be Your Loving Teddy Bear. And the engineer decided that because children were listening, that we definitely need to put reverb on the original mono recording here. Just another product extension is what this is. And it's a pretty nice RCA pressing. Looks to be from the 80s because of the label, late 70s or the 80s. That was in a box of stuff. Now here's an Elvis Presley record that's actually worth looking at. I consider this to be one of the few perfect 45s. That would be a double A-sided 45 where both songs were hits and they were both good and they complemented each other. So this is Elvis, Little Sister, the A side, and the B side is a tune called His Latest Flame. Also, in parentheses on later issues of that, they said Marie's the name, His Latest Flame. And it's a great tune. That's a great set of songs from Elvis. A couple of his best. Elvis 45s are interesting because Elvis would usually put the rocker on side one, that was like the rock and roll kind of tune. And then side two would be, trying to flip this around so you can see it. Sorry. Side two would be a country flavored song because he was big on both charts, So there's the original 1961 record. And then just recently in a box came this one, which is a reissue of the same 45, but this is from sometime in the 70s. And so I got a burner to play. because don't want to play the original 1961 too much. Don't want to put a lot of wear on it. Records will last a long time if they're handled properly. And yes, I'm being paranoid about putting wear on records, especially with the equipment, modern equipment, if it's set up properly, doesn't do any damage to records. The band is Radio, Ray Parker and Radio, and one of their first original singles was Jack and Jill on a lovely vinyl Arista record. What was this, 78, 79, something like that? No, it's not vinyl. This is styrene. You can hear it. Styrene. All right. This is a record I actually looked for a long, long time. And this was about the period of time that I stopped buying records from like eBay and Discogs that were like individual records, because I got bummed out because I would buy a record and it would be in crappy condition. And yeah, you can go online and find any of these, and somebody will happily sell them to you for $7 to $15, depending on what it is. The quality of what you get, who knows? But this is one that came in a box with a bunch of the records, and it's like almost new. This was a huge hit in 1980 for Kenny Rogers. Lady, a song that was produced by Lionel Richie. Kenny Rogers really liked what Lionel Richie was doing with the Commodores. And at that time, he wanted to kind of combine R&B and country and see if he could reach both audiences. And he hit it big with this record. This was number one pop, number one country, and was very high up on the R&B charts. And it was also number one on the adult contemporary charts. So a huge record. And Elvis is probably the only other person who was able to pull that off with Hound Dog. I think Hound Dog was on R&B, country, and pop all at the same time. Now, this was also when Kenny had switched to Liberty Records. This was the first single that he released on Liberty. And unfortunately, this came on an album where Kenny decided that he would re-record a lot of his big hits that he had for Reprise and on United Artists for Liberty. And one of my biggest pet peeves is re-records. I don't know why artists do that. Well, I do know why they do it. It's money. They get paid to do that. But it dilutes the product usually. There are very, very few instances in the history of popular recorded music where an artist went back and redid a record and did a better job than the first time around. There are exceptions. I'll give you one. That is a tune by Neil Diamond called Shiloh. He originally recorded that in 1966 for Bang Records. The original version sounds like crap, and it wasn't that big of a hit. He re-recorded that record in the early 70s when he was recording for Uni, short for Universal. And the Uni version was actually the bigger hit. I think it made it to number 11 on the pop charts, and it sounds better. So if I was programming an oldie station and I was going to play Shiloh, I would play the 1970 version. I wouldn't play the one from the 60s, because the one from the 60s is, I guess that's a matter of opinion too. But unfortunately, a lot of country artists did that. Cal Smith, Merle Haggard, Eddie Rabbitt even re-recorded a bunch of his old stuff. It's just, and they show up on Spotify and YouTube. Like you'll go to find a record and you'll end up getting some horrible sounding re-record when the artist was really old and had a completely different sound, and the music behind it is not as good. It's like, why bother? Why would you do that? Unless you can rearrange it or do something new with it that's interesting and exciting. But if you're just re-recording the same song with the same arrangement because you want a little... Sorry. Here's a record that showed up in a box of stuff. And this is the Savoy... Let me make sure I get this right before I say it. These are the Savoy Players doing Gilbert and Sullivan music. And it's an EP. I think there are 3 songs on each side. The record is obviously from the 50s. Okay. And like I said, back in those days, they had 45 RPM albums, which were called EPs. And this is one of them. The sound is horrendously bad on this record. The songs themselves sounds like they were recorded in the 30s. I don't know who these Savoy players are, but they have a catalog on the back, and you could get a whole bunch more of these. It's a curious record, so that's why I keep it. Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl. This was Rick Springfield's big comeback. Rick Springfield had a hit in 1973 called Speak to the Sky, and then he immediately disappeared. Well, he didn't disappear. He was in Los Angeles trying to figure out how to make money to eat. He was playing clubs and started doing acting. He started doing like TV commercials and stuff like that. And he landed a role on a soap opera. That's why here it says that, you know, this is Dr. Noah whoever from General Hospital. It says it right there. Right there. That side. There it is, right there. And so this enabled him to sell this album, Working Class Dog, when it came out, because he had that national exposure on television. And Working Class Dog became a huge record for him. So the first big single was Jesse's Girl. And then the next one that was a big hit was I've Done Everything for You, from the same album. This is a cut down version, by the way. Great album. Weird album. Some of the songs, there's a song on that album called Inside Sylvia. That's all I'm going to say. Twisted brain, man. Here's another guy from the early 80s that had a promising career and then went away. Billy Squier, Rock Me Tonight on Capitol. Lovely, a lovely Capitol pressing here. By the way, that Rick Springfield, I've Done Everything for You is on RCA vinyl, and the big hit is on it's on styrene, and I got burned on that one. This is one that I actually bought because I wanted to have the record, and the person who sold it said the record was in mint condition, and I get it, and I put it on the turntable. It came out of a jukebox, and the styrene had been damaged. So it plays, and you can hear what's going on, but it's not pleasant. I keep it for the sleeve. One of these days, in a box of records, you know, maybe the vinyl version will show up, and it won't be screwed up. Back to the early 50s again. And this particular picture sleeve is kind of falling apart, so I don't actually put the record in it. But this is Johnny Stanley. It's in the book. This is a comedy routine, and this was a big hit in the early 50s. And there's a couple of songs on a couple of other routines on side 2 here. Plus, there's a list of other things that you can get from Capitol. And so what does a 19, I think that was 51? Could be wrong. It's very early 50s. But this is what the record looks like. So this is early Capitol 45 from the 50s. Why don't you? Yeah, it's right side up. So early Capitol 45. You have one thing on one side and two on the other. They used to do that a lot. Little bonuses on side 2 of 45s. One of the reasons I started collecting them again was just because I love the things. When I started working in radio, we had them all over radio stations. We used to get brand new records from the record company and then put them on tape. I have a whole video about how that works. You can go find on my channel that I posted some time back and talked about the technology of records on the radio and all that stuff. So, Johnny, this is not in a proper bag. It's just in a poly bag here. One of the things that I need to warn you guys about is, and they're out there, you need to watch out. If you start collecting records, do not get these storage bags made out of vinyl. Not vinyl, polyvinyl chloride. You want polypropylene to put your records in. The reason why is because vinyl is somewhat unstable and it can migrate molecularly from the bag to the record. It'll fog the record. Many years ago, on an early edition of The Wall by Pink Floyd, the album, the double album set, in England, they had these. It had the record itself just had the bricks on it from the brick of the wall, and then it had a little vinyl piece of plastic made out of vinyl on the front of the album that said the name of the album and stuff like that. And people put it on their shelf, and then they came back years later and pulled them down, and right where that little square of plastic that said the name of what you were listening to, the wall, it had fogged the record even through the cover. And yeah, don't do that. Be careful about it. Now, you can put vinyl records next to each other. I guess there's nothing we can do about that, but it is what it is. This is an unusual vinyl A&M record. A lot of the records from this era, this would have been 1979 from A&M, are pressed in styrene, but this is a vinyl, and this is Supertramp, The Logical Song, in a tattered picture sleeve, and the flip side is Just Another Nervous Wreck from the album Breakfast in America, one of my favorite albums of all time. Back to the early 80s we go. Talking Heads. This is Burning Down the House. And I didn't even know they put this on a 45. First time I ever heard this was from a CD. It was one of the first CDs I ever remember hearing was this. And here's the 45 version right here on a Sire record. Pressed by Capitol, by the way. Got two copies of the same thing here. So I'll show you this one first. This is Toto, Pamela. This was a kind of a comeback song for them in 1988. That was a pretty decent hit on the radio. I love the harmonies in it. Mickey Thomas is the lead singer on this. And it's a lovely Columbia Styrene 45. Styrene does have, by the way, some advantages. It's very quiet. And so when you get one that's brand new, that hasn't been abused, they actually sound really, really good. If you can take care of them after that, play them light tracking styli, 2 grams and under, and stay away from any like aggressive exotic shape like a microline stylus. I know that AT sells a lot of those these days. They will eat styrene 45s. You really want a mild elliptical tracking lightly, or better yet, a spherical or conical stylus. That's the ball that goes down into the groove. Much better for styrene. Here's another iconic tune from the 80s, and this came from one of my boxes. This is Tina Turner. Tina. What's love got to do with it? Try it again. Okay. Turn it around. There you go. There's the front. So, little tattered. I need to buy some sleeves. But I have, at this point, uncounted 45s. And I would need to take a week off from work to put everything in a sleeve, you know. This is a song that is very different on the 45 than it is on the album. This is the remix of Everything She Wants by Wham. This would have been 1984. Late 84 was when this came out. And this was a #1 hit in the United States. And the flip side is, what is the flip side? Like a Baby. And that's just the album version. And of course, since it's Columbia, it's styrene. But it's pretty good styrene. Let me make it so you could actually see that. I don't quite know why. There you go. Now you can see it. That's better. Thank you. Yeah. I know you're out there cussing at me going, put your hand in front of me, can't see the label. I don't even know why you're doing this. There's another big one from 1984. It's a big year, ain't it? This is Denise Williams. Let's hear it for the boy. And this is from the Footloose soundtrack. There we go. And there's the record itself. Side 1 and side 2 are the same. It's Let's Hear It for the Boy. One says it's one time and one says it's the other. They're like 2 seconds difference. I can't hear any difference between the two. Remember hearing that when I was at summer camp for the first time. I think we had a DJ come and do a dance while I was at summer camp. And oh, I missed one. Before I do this one, I want to do this one. 84 again. Rod Stewart. Some guys have all the luck. And this is a capital pressed Warner Brothers 45, as you can see. There's actually several versions of that song around the world. Robert Palmer has a version of it that is a little bit off the wall. Apparently, 3 or 4 people dreamed that song up at once and went in to record it. And he went on ahead with it and recorded it and gave credit to the other songwriters. And so the only thing that's the same as the Rod Stewart version is the chorus. Other than that, he's got completely different words to the same song. And finally, I got one more record to show you. And it's not a picture sleeve, but I'm going to show you anyway. This is Yes from 90125, Owner of a Lonely Heart. This was a #1 hit song in 1984. And this was also one of the first records that I bought with my own money. An absolutely stunning sounding 45. By the way, it's just absolutely amazing on Atco. I'm trying to twist myself so you can see it. There we go. I'm trying not to touch the record. Bought this with my own money. This is one of my favorite albums of all time. And now I got something to show you that is not a CD. It's behind me. It's right here. I should have got it out first, shouldn't I? But I did not. So I must turn myself around so I can show this to you. I did a video about early CDs. And this was one that I showed in that video. That is the original CD on Atco from 1983, 90125. With the silver case and everything. And I spent last year, I was intrigued by early CDs. This is what's known as a Target CD, by the way. And that's just because the label looks like a Target. A lot of Warner and Atlantic and Elektra CDs came out with labels like this in the early 80s. And that leads me to the reason why I have all these records. You may wonder, in this age of you can hear anything you want to online, why would you bother to do this? Well, the reason why is very simple. These are the original records. This is the original sound. Beyond the record wear, this is what they were intended to sound like. What you hear today when you stream things, a lot of the time, are quote-unquote remastered versions of stuff. And which basically means we're going to shove a lot of bass into it and compress the hell out of it. And I'm not a big fan of that whole thing. I want the original sound because my ears remember that from when I was a kid. And when you play me something that you've messed with, they know. Okay, most people don't. If you're dealing with songs from the 60s and 50s and 60s, a lot of those songs that we hear today are not the originals at all, because during that time, the original 45s that were put out were in mono and had special mono mixes a lot of the time. And so what happened is that when stereo FM came along in the 70s, there was a push for stereo material, and the record companies started to reissue these oldies sets with remixed versions of the songs in stereo. They went back to the original multi-track tapes and they would remix them. Most of the time, that's what we are familiar with, even myself, because I am a child of the 70s. I grew up listening to those stereo versions. If you go back to the original 45s, they're very different. Okay. And there's a channel, actually, it's WABC Radio 77. Spencer has it on, where he has many of those original 45s and the hot mono mix. And it's interesting to go listen to those. And so I got into this thing where I got tired of hearing somebody else's idea of what I should hear, because with the modern technology, it was so easy to mess with things. And if there was a little click or a pop in a song, they would do a micro edit and they'd take it out. Well, I'm used to hearing it. There's a click in Lady Madonna. Tuesday afternoon is never ending. That's the lyric. When he gets down to the end of ing, on the original records, you hear a definite pop. It's a click. Either he does it himself, ending like that. I don't know. I've never figured out exactly what it is. Well, when they reissued that later, the Beatles, of course, all that stuff's been messed with. When they reissued that later, they took it out. Heard it all my life. Why did you do that? Leave it alone. So this is one of the reasons I start collecting and I hang on to the original pressings of CDs, trying to get as close to the original sound as possible, just for my own personal edification. This is a good example of why I would want the original CD and not the reissue too, is because when Atlantic made this album and got it ready for distribution, and this would have been in '83, they, of course, were thinking more about the 45 that I showed you and the LP, which is over here. I have the LP. When they went to do the CD, they used the master that they had prepared for the production of the LPs. This is slightly different than what Trevor Horn, who was the producer and engineer and a member of the band Yes at that time, handed into the record company. The record company went back and EQ'd it for vinyl. And like, for instance, the song, our song on here, which is the flip side of Owner of a Lonely Heart on here, is it fades in. So if you've heard this album, you're probably used to that, right? When they reissued it, they didn't fade it in. Now, I don't know why Atlantic originally prepared their tape with a fade in on that song, but when they reissued the CD, it sounds different. It may be better for Trevor Horn's ears because he knows that they changed it when they put it out. I don't know that. I'm the consumer on this end. I don't find that to be fascinating. So there's a lot of that stuff that they did with the Beatles. A lot of people, the Beatles, their entire library has been ruined. It doesn't sound anything like the originals at all. And there are so many different versions of everything floating around. It's crazy. And it's all product extension because every time they come out with something like that, it makes them money, or at least it used to. The only one that I kind of agree with, like, let me put the CD back up. The only one that I kind of agree with like that on the Beatles was that Jeff Emmerich insisted that the mono masters be put out on CD and records. In the 60s, in the UK, stereo was very much an audiophile foo-foo thing. Not everybody had it. And when they were mixing those albums, they didn't really care about stereo. Stereo was an afterthought. They would all stand around and mix the mono versions of everything and go, ooh, that sounds good, press it. And then if they were going to do a stereo version, they would leave, and Jeff Emmerich said that he would be left to do the whole thing, that his mix of Sgt. Pepper in stereo is the one that everybody heard when the CD came out in 1987 and all that other stuff. So he wanted the original monos to be put out, and they did, and I thought that was a good thing. One more record, and it's not a picture sleeve, but it's really quite very important, and it's probably the crown of my entire collection. So if you stayed this far and you're actually watching this video, then you must be a very special person and you must be interested in this. So I've, in many ways, saved the best for last. When I went to radio school in the 1980s, I started radio school in 1986 at the Chesapeake Center for Science and Technology in Chesapeake, Virginia. At that time, they had a radio station that was owned by the city of Chesapeake. And this was not a 10-watt high school radio station. It was a full-power radio station. I think they were running 1,500 watts. And they operated from 6 a.m. to 11 o'clock. This is before the days of automation, so they didn't automate the station at night. You had to have somebody in there. During the midday, they let us students come in. And I was a transfer student from Portsmouth, which is where I grew up. And I was riding a bus every day to get to Chesapeake to go learn how to do radio. And they had a show on in the midday called the Swing Club. This was 1986, but we were not allowed to play rock and roll. It was a classical station, and in the middle of the day, they had a swinging big band jazz kind of show. Okay. And the theme song from that was a tune called, excuse me, was a tune called I'm Not So Sure. And the guy's name is Peter York and the London Top Brass. Now, I know this because I'm holding the record. Back in the 80s, I remember that at one point in time, I had a task of taking this record and putting it on tape so that we could use it for a theme song on the air. And I have, in the back of my mind, been looking for this record all those years now. I found it. It was an eBay seller selling it for too much money. This record is unplayed. It's an original. This was not a hit. Okay. The fella who started the Swing Club was a guy named Jack Garrison, who started WFOS in the late 70s. The history of the station goes back to the mid 50s, 56, when they first signed on, and then they went away for a while, and he brought it back. And he wanted to do this little jazz show in the middle of the day, so he did. And like I said, I saw this record once 40 years ago. I remembered the title, I'm Not So Sure. What I could not remember was the artist. I thought that this was on Topps Records, okay? Because I could remember the word top was in it. This is all the information I've had. When I started collecting records again seriously in 2010, I started looking for this. And this is a shot in hell that you're ever going to get it. There's just no way that you're going to find something like this. And last week, about 3 weeks ago, this popped up. And I wasn't 100% sure that this was it, but it looked right. So I paid for it, and I paid too much money for this. This was $20, which I think is too much for a 45, especially one that, this isn't just rare, this is who cares, okay? This means something to me and nobody else. It showed up, I put it on the turntable. Sure enough, it's the original Swing Club theme. A couple of weeks after that, I found out that my teacher, who taught me radio, one of my teachers there, a fellow named Dennis McCurdy, had passed away. Dennis, unfortunately, has spent the last at least 15 years in a home suffering from Alzheimer's, which is really sad. I honestly believe that before Dennis left this planet, that he pushed the buttons or had a conversation with the gods of music and made it possible for me to have this record. So this is the crown of my collection right here. And there's a lot of sentimentalness connected with this, even if maybe there's only 3 or 4 other people on the planet that know what this is at this point, because all of my teachers from that period of time have passed on. But there you go. So I figured I would put that out in the universe. I'm Not Sure. Peter York and his London Top Brass, the theme from the FM 90 Swing Club, which is a show, by the way, that ran from the 70s, 77 to at least mid-90s. They ran the Swing Club. And then they changed it to something else. They called it the Hall of Fame, and they stopped using this theme because they were doing oldies. Thank you for watching this video. I certainly do appreciate it. If this is the kind of thing that you would like to see in the future, please let me know. I love your comments and suggestions. If you like this style of video where I just sit here and run my mouth for long periods of time about this kind of stuff, let me know, and I might do some more. However, if this turns out to be another video where there's no sound and nobody's heard me because I had the chat turned off, I can't see it anyway, gang. Leave me a comment. I will never do this again. This is the last attempt because it takes a long time to pull out all the records and get. If this didn't work, I'm never doing it again. Okay, so just. And you probably won't know because you won't watch this far anyway. And unless you lip read, if it's not working, you're not going to know what I just said. So you know what? It's time for me to shut up. Bye, y'all. Thank you for watching. I'm pushing the button. I'm pushing the button. I'm pushing the button. I'm going away. Yes, I want to end it. Yes.